His Excellency, the Vice President of Mauritius, the very many important people here, honored guests, Sagodre, Sagodrigale, all protocols observed. Yelarkum, Yen Anbalavanakam. Right until yesterday, I had a presentation prepared, some PowerPoint slides and things like that. And then after the first session, and I heard this impressive speakers, I threw it away. I threw it away and I said, I'll speak from my eyes and what training in South Africa meant to me and where I started off and where we are and where you can join in South Africa. Just a little bit about myself. I have two identities. We all do. My national identity, first and foremost, is that I'm a South African. My ethnic identity, I'm Pakatamalan. I started business in 1992, some 25 years ago, in the education and training business. I'm going to tell you more about that. I grew up in this country under a very cruel and racist system called apartheid. Most of the South Africans seated here grew up in that. All of us grew up in that. In those years, our residential areas were separated in race groups. So Indians lived with Indians, blacks with blacks. The privileged and the whites lived with whites. Coloreds and Chinese found themselves all over. And as Indians, we grew up in this Indian area. We lived there. We had to school in that area. Our schools were only with Indian children. Our teachers were only Indian teachers. Our schools were highly under-resourced, highly under-resourced. And our teachers were paid pitifully low salaries. But there was something about those teachers that no matter how low that salary was, you could not break the spirit of education in those Indian teachers. Am I right, South Africans? Am I right? Today, the success of the Tamil community, the broader Indian community, we owe to those humble earning teachers that put us to where we are. For our parents, and for some of you seated in this room who are quite elderly, you will remember that training, the only training you got was three types. You got swearing, you got scolding, and you got cursing from the white bosses. And that's how you learned, no other way. There was a policy, a corporate policy, a government policy too. It was hire and fire, one line. You had nothing to stand on. There was nothing to defend yourself against in legislation. The vast majority of black people in this country had it far worse than us. In 1992, I relocated to a very small country town called Zeerust, which is in the northwest province, some 800 kilometers from here. I was a humble teacher in those days. And whilst I was there, I had this opportunity to see what was called Bantustan education, the lowest form of education in this world. I've had the privilege of working with that. And as a teacher, I had at some stages up to 90 children in one class, 3 to a broken chair in some instances. And there, it was my late dad who encouraged me, Pragi, get out of this system, go private. And somewhere in 1992, I took that decision to open up my first business, which was an education and training center. I had no money to rub together, so I leased my first 4 computers. And being 1992, it was not even Pentiums. If you remember, it was the old 386 DX And my first set of training came from MS-DOS training that I trained in accounting packages. And some of you will laugh at this, but it was the old MS-DOS 5 and Lotus 123R24, the old DOS systems that I prepared people for industry. What a wonderful era it was. But I took to water like a dry land. I absorbed very fast. And before I knew it, I was owning 5 centers across the province: Vryburg, Zeerust, Mahikeng, Rustenburg, and mobile units. Something that I loved doing. I've trained over the years thousands, tens of thousands. I've trained people in moto, in welding, in baking and catering. I've helped set up community bakeries, farming projects, youth developments, people with disabilities. And I've even managed to spend 6 years in the prisons, not as a prisoner, but as a trainer for prisoners. Managed to get these people who were going to be released soon to be upgraded in their skills so that when they came out of this prison, they did not go back in. They used it to progress. It's an opportunity that I thank God for, and I thank the new regime that started in 1994 that gave us this wonderful opportunity to contribute to the progress of South Africa. When Nelson Mandela took over in 1994, not even a year later, Parliament passed an act, and it saw the establishment of the South African Qualifications Authority. Something that I'm glad that we all participated with, and myself in the environment, of the training environment, I managed to contribute to that. There were 3 primary objectives to this South African Qualifications Authority. 1 was to set up a qualifications framework. 2 was to set up education and training sectors. And 3 was to register standards, because there were no standards at that stage. From there, we progressed and strengthened ourselves to introduce good quality assurance measures, learnerships, skills development levies, grants, and so forth, to where we are now currently. Loosely put, our qualifications framework, and this is the easiest way to describe it for me, consists of 3 bands and 10 levels. The first band being your general education and training, which is your school. The second band being your further education and training, which is your skills development courses. That's where I'm doing my business. And the third one is the higher education and training, which is your universities. In the 10 levels that we have, the general education and the further education goes up to level 4. Level 5 to level 10 is your higher education and training. For those of you who want to invest in South Africa, this is something very important for you to grasp and to understand. There's plentiful opportunities available. And some of you come from countries that are so high-tech and so developed. We have good opportunities here in cloud technology, mobile apps, media information, technology, communication, and so forth. We stand with open arms and we wait for this to come through, to join us in this environment of education and training. But I want to pass a very simple message to all those seated that want to enter this business. It's not a luck game. It is not a way you can just walk inside this country, set up shop, and expect to make $1 million. It's not going to work like that. In South Africa, the education and training industry is a highly, highly regulated industry. Protection of the consumer is first and foremost. First and foremost, quality assurance is very important. There's regulations and legislations, and there's 2 that come to my mind. is the Further Education and Training Colleges Act and the regulation for the registration of private education and training colleges. We don't want to get into these acts. We are sitting here. I'm sitting here till tomorrow. I'll sit here even till Sunday. If anybody wants, I'll point you in the right direction. Thank you, sir. I'm finished. Last 2 paragraphs. But in terms of the South African Constitution, just about anybody who has money to invest in education and training can do so. As long as you don't discriminate on the basis of race and gender, you must be registered in terms of the state. And the last one, Bashar, is to provide protection for the consumer, and this is largely via financial surety, either through a trust account or through some sort of insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Mika Nandre.